having donated his wealth 3 times, yet becoming the richest man of the spring and autumn period. What was Fan Lei's secret strategy? Hello everyone, I am DA. Today, let's travel back to the spring and autumn period to talk about the brilliant moves of Fan Lei, the so-called god of wealth, the stories behind them, and the insights they can bring us. Giving up a promising official career and going into business in Qi state, as history buffs may know, in his early years, Fan Lei assisted King Gou Jian of Yue in enduring hardships and ultimately defeating the state of Wu Yu, helping King Gou Jian achieve his hegemony in the spring and autumn period by conventional standards. This was the perfect time for Fan Lei to be envied of as a lord, appointed as a high-ranking official, and enjoy the glory and prosperity that came with it. However, he made an unconventional decision. He handed back his official seal and gold, traveled to the state of Qi, changed his name, and made a living as a merchant. The cruel law of survival and the psychology of loss aversion. For those well versed in history, Fan Lei's choice is not hard to understand. Throughout the history of feudal China, there has been a brutal unspoken rule. It is easy to share hardships with a monarch, but difficult to share prosperity. The moment a minister achieves outstanding feats and holds growing power is exactly when the monarch begins to feel suspicious and wary. Modern psychology has a concept called loss aversion, and this unspoken rule of survival is the ultimate embodiment of this human trait. Just imagine, if you were a monarch who ruled the whole country after founding a dynasty, what would you fear most? Undoubtedly, it would be the threat to your throne. And a minister with excessive achievements and power is precisely the source of that fear. On the other hand, once a minister holds great power and enjoys generous rewards, their obsession with glory and survival will grow infinitely strong. Fan Lei's wisdom, however, lay in his ability to break free from this obsession by voluntarily giving up the easily attainable high official position and wealth. Fan Lei seemed to be ruining his future, but in reality, he was using a temporary concession to avoid the fatal fate of when the birds are gone, the bow is put away, when the hares are dead, when the hares are dead, the hounds are cooked. This was a clear, sighted insight into the laws of human nature and power dynamics. The decline of Fuguiniao, the once renowned Shu King. Forward to modern times for another classic example of loss aversion, Fuguiniao. The Shu King of the 1990s, with its solid craftsmanship and affordable pricing, the brand gained nationwide popularity when it was listed in Hong Kong. In 2013, its market value exceeded 10 billion yuan, with 3,000 stores spread across the country, making it an industry benchmark. However, the brand indulged in the dividends of its offline channels, ignoring the rising trend of e-commerce, and even publicly refused to develop an online presence, turning its core advantage into a heavy burden. When growth in its core business slowed down, instead of focusing on product upgrades, it greedily chased short-term profits in finance and mining, recklessly expanding into P2P platforms and mining sectors. Eventually, the collapse of these industries dragged the brand into a financial black hole of billions of yuan. Fuguiniao declared bankruptcy in 2019. Leaving tens of thousands of employees jobless. The once beloved national brand was reduced to a hollow shell, surviving only on OEM manufacturing, perfectly demonstrating the inevitable downfall of those who cling to existing dividends and resist the changes of the times. Fan Lei's money-making philosophy, cash flow is king, and proactively dilute wealth. Fan Lei engaged in agriculture, animal husbandry, and trade in Qi state, and soon became one of the wealthiest merchants in the region. Yet he gave away all his earnings to his neighbors and old friends, then moved to Tao with his family to start over. Many people were puzzled by his actions, calling him someone who abandons wealth like a worn-out shoe. In fact, Fan Lei's approach represented a top-tier wealth philosophy. He believed that the core value of wealth lies not in the accumulation of book figures. In fact, Fan Lei's approach represented a top-tier wealth philosophy. He believed that the core value of wealth, but in circulation and allocation. Concentrating huge wealth in a single region or industry may seem stable, but it is actually fraught with hidden risks. Any reversal in market supply and demand, shift in policy direction, or regional crisis can cause accumulated wealth to vanish overnight. Fan Lei's distribution of wealth was by no means aimless charity. Instead, he used wealth as a medium to gain cross-regional networks of contacts, build a reputation rooted in people's trust, and secure a safe development space free from the constraints of a single market. Essentially, through the redistribution of wealth, he achieved risk diversification and built anti-cyclical resilience. The Rockefeller family, secret to long-lasting wealth inheritance. Take the well-known Rockefeller family as an example. At the height of the oil industry in the late 19th century, the family did not sink all their capital into the energy sector. Instead, they took the initiative to split their assets. Part was invested in charitable foundations, focusing on education, public health, and other public welfare areas. This not only earned them a reputation that transcended generations but also created an asset pool, insulated from commercial risks. The other part was allocated by their family office to core global real estate and dividend-paying leading stocks, cash flow, generating assets. Even though the oil industry experienced several cyclical fluctuations in the following years, the family's wealth managed to weather the crises through diversified allocation, maintaining prosperity for over a century. The bankruptcy of Suning, a retail giant, for a counterexample, Let's look at Suning. The once dominant retail giant, after rising to the top of the industry by capitalizing on offline channel dividends, Suning failed to embrace Fanli's wisdom of wealth dilution and risk hedging. Instead, it continued to pour profits into inefficient expansion, spending huge sums to acquire loss, making Wanda department stores and Carrefour China stores, and recklessly expanding into non-core sectors like sports and finance, locking up a large amount of cash flow in illiquid heavy assets. When the e-commerce wave disrupted the offline retail ecosystem and capital market volatility triggered a cash flow crunch, Suning's overly concentrated asset allocation left it with no room to maneuver. Eventually, it was trapped in a debt crisis of 238.7 billion yuan, having to resort to bankruptcy restructuring and selling core assets to survive by cutting off its arm. The former industry benchmark became a victim of the changing times. These two famous cases serve as modern proof of Fan Li's money-making wisdom. True wealth security does not come from clinging tightly to existing assets, but from keeping wealth in circulation, hedging single risks through diversified allocation, and exchanging proactive dilution for broader space for survival and growth. Lao Tzu's philosophical thought, reversal is the movement of the Tao. Beneath the psychology of loss aversion and Fan Li's wealth philosophy lies the core Taoist principle. Reversal is the movement of the Tao. It reveals an eternal truth. The development of all things follows the cycle of prosperity, leads to decline, and decline breeds prosperity. The peak of fullness is inherently the beginning of emptiness. Many people misinterpret this idea as advocating surrender. If prosperity inevitably leads to decline, why strive for further progress at all? In reality, the deeper essence of reversal is the movement of the Tao is never about giving up, but about transformation, transforming the form of wealth, switching tracks of development, and shifting one's position. It requires people to maintain foresight and clarity when standing at the peak, so as not to be blinded by immediate prosperity. It demands the courage to let go when things are going smoothly, using temporary concession to gain more sustainable progress. Fan Li's story tells us that the true masters of wealth are never slaves to wealth, but practitioners of natural laws. Those who know how to take the initiative to turn around at the height of prosperity can find the vitality of movement amid the law of reversal and embrace a broader world after letting go.